Personally, I would consider last night's loss to the Phillies the most frustrating loss of 2024. The Giants had numerous opportunities to just break this game open, and they did not do it, and they ended up losing by a run. So, super frustrating. They're going to have to play better if they want to get where they want to go.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes, usually Monday through Friday. I know today is Saturday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win, unlike the Giants. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. And yes, coming up on today's show, we're going to somewhat detail this exceptionally frustrating loss for the Giants in Philadelphia. Like, this was just a game that they had, I don't want to say handed to them, but like they had just so many times where they could have blown this game open, and they had Aaron Nola on the ropes completely, like threw 45 pitches in an inning, or I forget the exact pitch count, and ended up with just 2 runs out of that situation. They had the bases loaded and nobody out and got just 1 run out of that situation. And so when you do all that, you expect a lot more than 3 total runs. And so the Giants, they had 8 hits, they had 4 walks, they had only 1 extra base hit, and with runners in quote-unquote scoring position. If you know me, you know I don't like that term, but yeah, they were 2 for 11. They left 8 on base, and they grounded into 2 double plays, including Jorge Soler with that big bases loaded, nobody out. Jorge Soler, it's like you just got to do better than that. Double play down by 2 runs there is just not the deal. And so Jorge Soler, he's going to be a topic of conversation today because he has just not been what they need him to be. He's just been overall, I mean, the frustration is on his, you could see it. He breaks a bat over his knee the other day out of frustration. And so, yeah, on the season, he's hitting 205 with a 293 on base and 368 slugging. It's just not remotely close to the type of production that they expect, and probably when all is said and done, what his production will look like. But in the meantime, it's costing them games. I mean, if he hits a double there, the Giants win the game. And then he was the guy who was up with the bases loaded and 2 outs after the Giants had made Aaron Nola throw so many pitches, and he popped out. And so we've seen a lot of that, just kind of weak outs. We've also seen some bad luck at times from the Giants, including from guys like Jung-Hoo Lee, who once again hit a ball extremely well that would have been a multiple run homer, but it was just foul down the right field line. Speaking of Lee, I do not want to forget this. He made one of the best catches of the year by anybody in center field. And so the more this guy plays, just the more I'm impressed with the defense. I think the offense, I think he's been one of the more unlucky players in the league. But the defense, I mean, I don't buy this at all. Defensive runs saved has him at -2, outs above average at -1. The thing about these kinds of numbers is that they're not, they kind of take a while to stabilize. I mean, what are we talking about? That was just an incredible play. He made an incredible play in Boston as well on a play diving inwards on a ball, which is the hardest read to get. And that play he made in center last night was unbelievable. But just the Giants offense as a whole hasn't been good enough. And they just had so many opportunities to be good enough to win that game, and it would have put them just a game under 500. Instead, they're 3 games under 500, and so it's just the frustration is mounting in a way, I would say, and especially offensively, like they just haven't been able to bust through. And yesterday was the kind of the peak of that. I just think that it doesn't get much more frustrating offensively than that. And it wasn't just offensively that it was frustrating. The Giants had some frustrating defensive plays as well. I mean, one of the biggest plays in the game was a passed ball that we're going to get to later by Tom Murphy after Patrick Bailey had to exit with an injury with blurry vision. And so there's a lot more to break down from this game. But if we look at something there, on Fangraphs, you can look at, they have this number called clutch. It says how much better or worse a player does in high leverage situations than he would have done in a context neutral environment. And so for the Giants as a whole, they have the 7th worst clutch rating, meaning they do worse than in clutch situations than they do in neutral situations. And that's not surprising at all. I mean, but I'll give you some of the teams that have been less clutch. The Dodgers have been one of the least, by far more unclutch than the Giants, according to this metric. So, take it for what it is. It's not necessarily the end all be all, but the Giants offense for sure has been unclutch. And it's not surprising that when we look at the individual players, let's see who's been the most clutch and the least clutch on the Giants. Well, Michael Conforto actually comes in as the least clutch. And again, this means relative to what they've done in context neutral situations. Context neutral? Yeah, that's what they call it. So, like, when it's not clutch, Conforto does well. And when it is clutch, he's not done well. And again, this isn't really a predictive stat. This is just a kind of a storytelling stat. This is what's happened. It doesn't mean it's going to continue to happen. Most clutch, Nick Ahmed. I don't think that comes as much of a surprise. He's had some big hits and just kind of stepped up in some big situations. Wilmer Flores, Tyro Estrada, Patrick Bailey at the top. Jorge Soler second to last. And then win probability added is a big one here. And Lamont Wade Jr. is number 1 for the Giants. Patrick Bailey second. And everybody else on the team has been negative, which is insane. And Jorge Soler is last, basically costing them 3/4 of a win by win probability added with his offensive contributions. And that's all he is offensive contributions, because he's a DH. And so he needs to hit in order to justify his position on the roster, which I'm not saying it's not time to like cut or, I mean, there's no cutting Jorge Soler. It's a multi-year deal. He's here. He's got a track record. He's gonna get that big hit at some point, and it just didn't happen yesterday. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, I do want to discuss the defensive miscues and the Patrick Bailey injury and just a lot more. The defense was just as frustrating. Like this one play in particular, it's the thumbnail of this episode. A 2-base pass ball just can't happen. Just can't happen. And it was a strike. The umpire, what are we doing? So we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you burn rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, as promised, we're gonna get more into this game. The less said, the better, I guess. But at the same time, this was an interesting game. It was not fun, but it was interesting, and a lot happened. And like I said, the Giants could have easily scored 6, 7, 8 runs in this game. They had those opportunities, and they just didn't get the job done. Soler had a lot to do with that, with his two bases loaded at bats. Just I mean, even in that bases loaded, nobody out. Like even if you just hit like a deep sacrifice fly, brings home a run, moves the other runner to third, and the whole thing could be different. But a double play there is just the last thing that you want. Like you'd almost rather strike out. No, no, you'd rather. I don't know what's worse, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good, and they had Nola on the ropes, and they couldn't do. They could not. I mean, 45 pitches and only to get 2 runs out of that is kind of. I wonder how many times a pitcher has thrown 45 or more pitches in an inning, and how many runs they give up on average when they throw 45 or more pitches. Something like that. I would be interested in finding that out. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we're going to be breaking down not the last, the next 2 games of this series in Philadelphia. They also play on Monday in Philly. Yeah. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume like I do with all of that shouting like I did? Make the switch like I did to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And speaking of your team every day, I just want to remind you that Eric Engel is the host of the Locked On Giants postcast. So after almost every game, we can't expect him to do all 162, like literally all, but weekends included. Eric Engel on Locked On Sports Bay Area on YouTube. Check it out right now if you haven't yet, and hit that subscribe button and the bell notification and all that, because if you want like instant reaction and you want to be a part of that conversation, that's where to go. And then we still do this show, of course, typically Monday through Friday. It's been a crazy couple of weeks for me, and traveling and stuff. But yeah, and then that show also shows up on the Locked On Giants podcast feed, but not on the YouTube channel, if that makes any sense. So. Also, a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search the word Giants. So I do want to get into this play by Tom Murphy, who had to come into the game because Patrick Bailey had to leave the game with blurry vision, which is just about the last thing you want to hear coming from the guy who's basically emerged as the Giants' most important player, I think, Patrick Bailey, because of what he does right now on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's moved up in the lineup. We know what he's capable of doing offensively. He's young. You just got to be really careful, and catchers and concussions and stuff are scary. But the good news is, after the game, Andrew Baggerly tweeted out 16 hours ago. So this was, I'm in a different time zone right now, but not late, but yesterday evening, he said, Bob Melvin says Patrick Bailey is feeling better. He is not currently in the concussion protocol. They don't have a plan yet, but obviously they'll have to make a call quickly to get Blake Sable here tomorrow if necessary. So I would probably imagine that Blake Sable goes on like taxi squad, because you can't have just one catcher available. And if Bailey, I mean, blurry vision, I just feel like you do not want to mess around with that. It just like what comes to mind is like Mike Matheny and the constant or like multiple blows to the head in a short amount of time, and how that is what can be really devastating to the brain. And so I just hate it. But Bailey had to come out of the game. I know there's been some chatter about Joey Bart on the Pirates and how, they shouldn't have traded Joey Bart or DFA'd him and then traded him. But I just want to point out, like, Joey Bart had 4 good first games with the Pirates. 1, 2, 3, 4. He played well for those 4 games. Since then, he's played in, I don't know, like 10 games. Since April 21st, he has hit with the Pirates 095 with a 240 on base and a 238 slugging with a 32% strikeout rate. So like there's I refuse to buy into a 13 game sample of Joey Bart overall being good for the Pirates. Because, I mean, let's just say last year with the Giants, it was a 30 game sample when he was bad. I mean, he would hit 207, 263 on base, 264 slugging. Those are abysmal numbers. If you combine this year with the Pirates and last year with the Giants, um, Joey Bart, the numbers are bad. I mean, we're talking like 22% below average offense. And so I don't know. I'm not buying 13 games and totally changing my tune after he played 160 something games and was really bad. And so that's just how I feel. And Tom Murphy, I mean, he's had a rough time, and he had a rough time last night. Defensively, he's not the best, but I don't think he's the worst. I'll have to. I mean, he's consistently been a good hitter, and we just haven't seen that yet. But defensively, he really hurt them there with a play that, first of all, the umpire hurt them. And if you look at the umpire scorecards, I just must say it says that it, overall favored the Giants, but it was such a bad strike zone last night that it was just horrible. And this play in particular should have ended the inning. It was a strike, but Murphy didn't even come. He put his glove basically in front of his face. It was like a splitter, and I get it. It's Jordan Hicks. It's nasty, but it's like kind of right down the middle at the top of the zone. Splitter, like right in there. So if he catches that ball, it's strike three called, inning over, no runs. But instead, he just completely whiffs on the ball. I mean, he gets a glove on it, and then he holds it there, like trying to frame, because you don't have to catch it to have it called a strike. And so he kind of held his glove there, trying to frame it for the umpire because it was a strike. But the umpire did not call it a strike. And so he's just sitting there framing this pitch when the ball is like rolling away. And your runner on second is Trea Turner. And this is one of the fastest guys in the game, one of the most aggressive base runners in the game. And I will also point out Jordan Hicks, the pitcher, didn't kind of cover home quickly enough. He wasn't thinking two bases from Turner. You just got to anticipate a little bit more. You got to anticipate that you can't just assume that guys are going to do what you expect and what you want them to do and not be aggressive. And so because Jordan Hicks is still standing on the mound and because Tom Murphy is still sitting there framing the pitch, Trea Turner just senses an opportunity and just never stops and rounds third. Murphy eventually goes and picks up the ball. Jordan Hicks, of course, eventually runs home, but it all just happened too late, and it was a bad throw by Tom Murphy. It kind of forced Jordan Hicks like up into his left when really the throw should have been like middle or down into his right. And so if he makes a better throw, they probably get him out because as it was bang bang and it was so close. They ruled him safe. If he had been called out, it probably would have stood. So the Giants challenged, and the call stood. And I think if they had called him out, I think he was safe for what it's worth. But anyway, it made me angry because what it was just what did I write? There was something I wrote. Disgusting. In my notes, I wrote disgusting. Murphy drops what should have been strike three with 2 outs. Ball gets away, allows Turner to score from second. Hicks was also late covering. Disgusting. But then I said, but it was also a strike. Like, come on, automatic ball strike system. Where are you at? Because that was like totally a strike. And yeah. And then another note, by the way, after Soler grounded into that double play that I was mentioning earlier, bases loaded, nobody out, the Giants' kryptonite. Doesn't matter. The players change. That's what's crazy. It's like players change. Doesn't matter. Bases loaded, nobody out. It's a bad situation for the Giants. It's the best possible situation you can have, and yet it just feels like, I mean, we should look back over the last 10 years and see, or 5 at least, and see who's the worst team with the bases loaded and nobody out. I feel like it would be the Giants, or at least they're in the bottom third for sure. Like somehow they do not do well in that situation. And I don't know who to blame. I don't know who to blame. Like, do you blame the hitting coaches? Do you start talking about Justin Veely again, like we did last year for a long time? And by the way, also Matt Chapman dropped a pop up that led to a 3-run inning, and it was the first batter of the inning, and it should have been an out. Instead, it was not an out, and then 3 runs ended up scoring in the inning. Giants had a 2-0 lead. So anyway, can you tell I'm frustrated? Can you tell I'm frustrated? My notes say disgusting. So, coming up in just a minute, we will wrap up that game, move on, talk about what's to come today, and also how about a little bit about the Padres making a blockbuster trade, acquiring Luis Ariz. I want to mention that and just kind of what that means for the Giants in this already tough division and National League with a lot of parity, and it's going to be a fight till the end. So we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite players and sports. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is long over. The baseball season is in full swing. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond like I do on a regular basis in your Prize Pick entries. Whether it's strikeouts, runs batted in, first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action in sports in more than 30 states across the country, including the state of California. So, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff to this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. Unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. That's kind of more my style than teaming up, to be honest. Competitive side. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. But there's something for there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, as promised, we're going to turn the page on this game. Preview today's game. Giants going up against a tough pitcher, and they've got Keaton Winn on the mound. So this is a big game. Like, to fall 4 under 500, long road trip, should have won yesterday. Feels like this is a big game to me. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we'll be breaking down today's game and tomorrow's game as the Giants continue this little this long 4-game series in Philly. We'll be breaking it down on Monday. And I mean, that game's going to be early, so we might even do it after the game to break down all 3 games, just FYI. Also, remember, right after every game, postcast with Eric Engel. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Bay Area on YouTube for that, and hit the bell notification after every game, instant reaction, and you can join the conversation. So check that out. And a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search the word Giants. So, to wrap up this game, I mean, the Giants, Jordan Hicks, it wasn't his best outing for sure. Both he and Aaron Nola lasted 4 innings and each threw 88 pitches, I believe, in those 4 innings. Nola threw 89, Hicks threw 88. So both starting pitchers, not great. Sean Jelly, who I was just critical of the other day, of course, came in and threw 2 innings with 4 strikeouts and no hits, no runs, no walks. So talk bad about a guy. I never talk bad. Like somebody asked in a mailbag, like, what's my opinion of Sean Jelly? And I was like, basically mentioning him as a DFA candidate to try to get Mason Black onto the roster as a starter to fill in that Blake Snell spot. But Jelly looked as good as he's ever looked yesterday. And so that was encouraging. Luke Jackson pitched a scoreless inning. Taylor Rogers with 3 strikeouts in a scoreless inning. That was good to see. I also kind of talked, not bad. Where are the extra bases? That's what when I'm looking at this, you had 1 extra base hit, and it was the 7th inning with Tyro Estrada. Or excuse me, it was the 2-run inning early in the game. Tyro Estrada hitting a double. So how about some extra base hits with guys on base? Come on, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? There's just not enough extra base power coming out of the Giants. And then pitching wise, Hicks just didn't have his best outing, but the bullpen once again, 2 games in a row, I believe it is that they did not allow any runs out of the pen. And yeah, the 2 of the runs that Jordan Hicks allowed were unearned. So he allows 4 runs, but 2 unearned. And that there, my friends, is the difference in the game. So if they had just hit with the slightest bit of clutchness, or if they had just defended a little bit, which they've been good at this year, then I mean, if Patrick Bailey doesn't exit with blurry vision, I should say, not a concussion, he's not in the concussion protocol, they probably win this game. And so just so many things were there for the taking, and they couldn't do it. So turning the page, finally, I want to get into the matchup tonight. Giants at 3:05 Pacific will play the Phillies again. Phillies, by the way, do they have the best record in baseball or the National League at least? They are 22-11. They've won twice as many games as they've lost. That is a 667 winning percentage, which is, in fact, the best record in all of baseball. And so, man, when you have a chance to win a game against that team, you got to seize the opportunity. Otherwise, you're going to be kicking yourself. And that's what they're doing, what I'm doing. I'm kicking them a little bit for this one. But anyway, tonight, Ranger Suarez. Let's talk about this man for a second. Ranger Suarez, I know because he's on my fantasy baseball team. He's been unbelievable. He's got a 1.32 ERA, a 2.01 expected ERA, 2.57 fielding independent pitching. He's been awesome, and he's always kind of been good since they moved him to the rotation full time in 2022. He's a lefty. He doesn't throw super hard. His average fastball velocity is just this year 91.6. That's actually down like about a mile and a half off of last year. Also throws a cutter, throws a curveball, throws a changeup. So just kind of a crafty lefty. Soler, you need your righties like Chapman, Soler, Slater, like Tom Murphy. This is a good opportunity. Some of you are not going to be happy to hear this, but to give Bailey another day, because you got a lefty on the mound, and that's kind of what Murphy is on this roster to do, is to hit left-handed pitching. So the righty bats getting to a tough Ranger Suarez is going to be key. And then also Keaton Winn, like, can he continue to establish himself as a good major league pitcher? That's what he's done so far this year. He's got a 3.18 ERA. 3.96 expected ERA, 3.69 fielding independent pitching. Just across the board, like nothing jumping out as like, oh, this is completely unsustainable. And a ground ball rate of 60.2%, 34 innings. I bet you. So that's probably one of the highest in the game. So if we look at ground ball rates, I hope that he qualifies so that he shows up. But he does. This is crazy. You want to know the top 5 ground ball rates in the game? Max Fried, number 1. Okay, whatever, on the Braves. The next 4 guys, Ranger Suarez, who is the starting pitcher tonight for the Phillies, number 2. Logan Webb, number 3. Keaton Winn, number 4. And Jordan Hicks, number 5. So 4 of the 5 are in this series in Suarez, Webb, Wynn, and Hicks. And so that's kind of crazy. So expect a lot of ground balls. You're going to have to, clean infield defense, which the Giants should be able to do. Chapman, Ahmed, Estrada, Wade. Well, Wade may not be it. Flores, I suppose. Wade, it's probably, Flores, that's another key right handed bat here in this game. And so those are the keys. You're going to have to hit and you're going to have to defend on the ground. So hit the righty bats and infield defense. Those are my 2 keys to the game. And just like, can you hit this guy who's been extremely good? So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, no, not tomorrow. Today's Saturday. Monday, we'll be breaking down. I don't have the schedule pulled up. We may wait until after that game because it'll be morning on the West Coast. My time zones are all messed up. I've been traveling around the country. So we'll have an episode on Monday. It's just a matter of when. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I just realized I said I would talk about the Padres getting Luis Arraez, and I didn't. Eventually, we will do that. That is a significant trade that makes the division and the National League wildcard landscape that much tougher. But I just realized I didn't mention that. So anyway, forgive me, but thanks again for listening today and bearing with me on a Saturday here, and go Giants tonight. You are now Locked On Giants.